Hello everyone, some things are worth the wait, and today that wait is over after months of careful tracking. So today we have something truly special to unveil. This model has been on the horizon for quite some time. Ladies and gentlemen, so I'd like to introduce you all to the Northrop YF-23 Black Widow 2, or the Gray Ghost if you'd like to use that phrase, with a serial number 87-0801. Now, this specific prototype, called the PAV-2 off of Edwards Air Force Base in California circa 1990. So let me briefly mention one thing here. I know I promised some quick tidbits in my previous video review of Mirage 2000. However, when this incredible new model arrived, I've decided to pivot and focus on that instead. So back to the subject of the YF-23. Now, probably I should offer a few words here saying that this was a star that meant to shine but never did. So let's dive into it. Nearly 35 years ago, Northrop rolled out the YF-23, codenamed Black Widow 2. So, in 1981, the United States Air Force began forming requirements for a new air superiority fighter, intended to replace the capability of the F-15 Eagle. Well, history showed that the Eagle could handle the fulcrum just fine in actual air-to-air combat. And also because the F-15 doesn't have that combination of stealth. Further, in the mid-1981, the Air Force released a formal request for information, or better known, the RFI, to the leading aircraft companies, uh, incidentally with no government funding. For these one-year studies, each company absorbed the cost. The RFI was sent to 9 companies: Boeing, Fairchild Republic, General Dynamics, Lockheed, McDonnell Douglas, Grumman, and Northrop, among other manufacturers such as Rockwell. However, of these 9, only 7 chose to participate, submitting a total of 19 concepts, and Fairchild Republic chose not to participate. The 19 design concepts differed considerably in size, in shape, maneuverability, and as the studies progressed, the design parameters were refined from the reduced RCS, or the radar cross-section. Further, by 1986, the Air Force had narrowed the list of the ATF hopefuls down to 2 candidates: Lockheed, by teaming up with Boeing and General Dynamics, forming the YF-22, which later became the F-22, and Northrop teaming with McDonnell Douglas with the YF-23. In June 1981, the Advanced Tactical Fighter, or the ATF, was officially published by the United States Air Force as a direct initiative, so the design concepts were provided by defense contractors. The common areas among the concepts were stealth and supercruise. It was envisioned that the ATF would incorporate emerging technologies, including advanced alloys and utilizing composite materials, also advanced fly-by-wire, the flight control systems, to enhance the power of propulsion system, and low observable or stealth technology, alongside with the thrust vectoring systems, which incidentally that was the priority element for the ATF program, basically to achieve the superior agility. Let's stick with this for a second. What was the original goal of the ATF program? Well, the ATF program aimed to develop a next-generation air superiority fighter, basically to replace the F-15 Eagle and counter advancements by the Soviet Union, such as the Sukhoi fighters, for example, the Su-27 flankers and the MiG-29 fighters, as well as to negate surface-to-air missiles by using stealth technology. The program sought to achieve air dominance and incorporate significant technological advancements, and this program was established in 1981 as it was a large collaborative effort, and this program involved a quite good number staff from the United States Air Force, Bill Creech, Bill Kirk, General Butler. However, one of the key figures who was the most associated with authoring the initial 1981 Statement of Need for the ATF program was the retired four-star General Michael John Lowe, and also the commander of Tactical Air Command from March 1991 to June 1992. His extensive involvement in the program stemmed from his prior experience with aircraft requirements and development. After his tours as a fighter pilot and test pilot, Lowe held several positions at the Pentagon and Aeronautical Systems Division, where he helped guided the next generation of fighter jets, including the F-15 and the F-16. He authored the original Statement of Need for the ATF, basically defining the essential requirements for the next generation fighters. Also, that experience made him a highly influential and strong supporter of the F-22, which resulted from the ATF program. Moving on, now what we need to know about the YF-23. So the Northrop YF-23, codenamed Black Widow 2, was a stealth fighter prototype developed in the late 1980s and early 1990s as a part of the United States Air Force Advanced Tactical Fighter Program, basically competing against Lockheed Martin's the YF-22, which became the F-22 Raptor as we know today. So the YF-23 aircraft showcased better stealth capabilities and advanced variable cycle engines. Only two YF-23 prototypes were built. First, the YF-23 PAV-1, which was the first prototype powered by Pratt & Whitney, the YF-119 engines, was painted in a charcoal gray, and it was nicknamed the Spider or the Black Widow 2. Then the YF-23 PAV-2, the second prototype, which is what we have today in front of us. So the PAV-2 was powered by two General Electric, the YF-120 engines, and was painted in two shades of gray, also earning the nickname of the Gray Ghost. However, despite these advantages, it lost the contract due to the YF-22's better agility, and because the YF-22 was equipped with the thrust vectoring system, and of course with the Lockheed Martin's being more effective when it comes to marketing. The other side of it, the Lockheed Martin's has a diversified approach to marketing and more robust vision for a future product development. Well, that's just my take as an Air Force guy here, so don't quote me on that, folks. So, on August 27, 1990, test pilot Paul Metz climbed into the cockpit of his PAV-1 YF-23 prototype. He did his final checks and he took to the skies, testing the limits of the aircraft. On that day was the day of the Northrop collective dream. Seeing their aircraft soar through the sky was a moment of immense pride for everyone involved in the program. It was a historic moment for the Northrop team after putting out of so many years of dedication and hard work. So it was a smooth flight from takeoff to landing, flawless without any incidents. Following the successful maiden flight, unfortunately, the team's initial jubilation was tragically short-lived because on August 29, 1990, only 2 days after the PAV-1 first flight, Lockheed triumphantly rolled out its YF-22 on September 29, 1990. However, test pilot Jim Sandberg was behind the controls of the first flight of PAV-2 prototype. Unfortunately, There were one minor problem occurred with the YF-23 PAV-2. There was a subsequent landing gear malfunction. For whatever reason, created a significant issue and marked a missed opportunity for Northrop team, which kind of left a bad mark. So after several unsuccessful attempts to lower the landing gear, the test pilot was eventually able to deploy it successfully, and also he managed to land the PAV-2 without any further incidents. Moving on, a month later, Lockheed flew their first prototype, which is the YF-22, for the very first time. Now, the competition had entered the final round. Lockheed made some diverging strategies, which Northrop took different approach. Giving these points, an assessment of this topic reveals, well, although the Northrop built a very successful platform, however, on April 23, 1991, the Pentagon made a decisive phone call, basically identifying which company would recoup their $650 million investment. Following that phone call, the Northrop was directly notified of the program loss, which was perceived as a collapse and led to universal dismay. After that announcement, the YF-23 Black Widow 2 program was completely dissolved. So, coming from an Air Force veteran perspective, I know Northrop has had crap luck in getting the United States Air Force to pick up its fighters. I mean, both prototypes were magnificent, but I always thought the YF-23 was a better looking bird than the YF-22. Nevertheless, the Northrop encountered other issues that contributed to its loss of the ATF program. Well, the other initiative steps that the Lockheed team conducted a more aggressive and extensive flight testing in the program. The YF-22, I think, flew considerably more sorties and hours during the demonstration phase, which gave the Air Force greater confidence in its reliability and development maturity. Northrop, meanwhile, was seen as a riskier bet due to the management issues and the cost overruns on its B-2 bomber program. That being said, some lessons were learned from the previous programs. The other factor is Lockheed used a more effective public relations strategy to sell its aircraft. The team performed a visible and aggressive throughout the flight demonstrations, including test firings of air-to-air missiles from the Eternal base, and surely to showcase its readiness for production. However, Northrop chose not to perform a similar higher visibility test, which may have given the impression that the YF-22 was more mature system. The other factor is the YF-22 was designed with a two-dimensional thrust vectoring nozzles, basically allowing its engine exhaust to be redirected vertically. This gave it exceptional agility, especially at a high angles of attack, which the Air Force evaluated for instances, close range air combat scenarios and have better maneuverability. In contrast, the YF-23 used a fixed nozzles for maximum stealth and speed. The other aspect of the YF-23 was a little longer than the YF-22. Um, the aircraft size was kind of necessary to accommodate its internal fuel tanks, which were larger than the YF-22. Basically to extend a combat range. So, as someone with an aeronautical background, my take on this is you don't have to be an expert in aerodynamics to know that the YF-23 design was simply too good to waste, right? Which was a very sleek and angular design. I think Northrop were already working on this basic design for another project and then modified it for the ATF program to provide some competition for Lockheed. So the truth of matter is that the DoD, or the Department of Defense, I think told the Northrop to hold back and let the Lockheed to catch up. Well, certainly Northrop didn't seem too bothered when they lost the competition, although all the news and everything, probably because they had already been awarded another black contract based on this design. And I think it was a colossal mistake for the Air Force. Um, I think it's fair to say, although the YF-22 is a solid fighter, I mean, it is hard to argue over the F-22. I mean, it's still the best dominators in the sky, right? But the Air Force missed the opportunity by not selecting the YF-23. I think the YF-23's superior stealth capabilities and Super Cruise performance were more aligned with the next generation of air-to-air dominance, particularly. And these advantages outweighed, I think, the YF-22's marginal superiority and agility. However, it would have been nice if they bring back this beauty into service and just upgrade its avionics to basically complement the fifth generation fighters, such as the F-35s as well as the F-22s. Indeed, there were a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat, tears involved in this beauty. Personally, I have a lot of appreciation for those men and women that they put their heart and soul into this program and create one of the greatest planes ever developed. The design of the YF-23 was a revolutionary, and it was a cutting-edge design way ahead of its time. I mean, just by looking at it, the look of it, it just says it all. Right, very stealthy design, which incidentally, that was the main criteria of the ATF program. And to this day, the Northrop YF-23 remains a somewhat controversial aircraft, and I will say that the history remembers both good and bad. Historical records will remain to be interpreted by historians and studied for generations. However, those who have been part of the history will remember it forever. So as a final point, folks, and now I'd like to walk through the design characteristics of this beauty. Folks, please bear with me for a moment. I'll try to cover the basics. So this aircraft featured an unconventional VTOL design that basically combined the functions of vertical and horizontal stabilizers, which reduced the weight and radar signature, and the diamond-shaped wings. The YF-23 had trapezoidal diamond-shaped wings. Those major factors were contributing to its speed and stealth profile. Lastly, the engine exhaust. The engines were buried deep within the fuselage, and the exhausts were shielded to minimize the aircraft infrared signature and block the engine radar cross-section. Now, the final wrap, as for the YF-23 PAV-1, it remains as a brilliant concept at the National Air Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, near Patterson Air Force Base. Well, this aircraft remains a silent sentinel of history, and it whispered a future that never came, basically collecting dust and memories. Although the YF-23 never went into the full production, I've been a big fan of this aircraft ever since I was a child. Now, don't get me wrong, the F-22 is the beast, but the YF-23 has a certain design elegance that I just prefer. Now, with all that stated, let's take a look at the model details. Let's see how Hobbymaster rendered this new tooling. So the model number is HA2850. First of all, I never thought the Hobbymaster would ever produce the YF-23. The fact that this aircraft, it never entered full-scale production, and this is exactly why I was so surprised. Well, I'm glad to say that I was very wrong about that, and here it is in its glory. It's a model of marvel. Hobbymaster, they've done a really good job of modeling this YF-23. I had a chance to look at the real YF-23 at the Air National Museum in Dayton, Ohio. It is a big bird, folks, bigger than the F-22 Raptor. even bigger than the F-14 Tomcats, so to speak. So it is a long model. This comes the second place in terms of size-wise. I think the only aircraft in my collection that is longer than this is the F-111. I know you guys haven't seen the F-111 made it to my channel yet, but rest assured the F-111 is on the horizon for the channel. So moving on, the paint accuracy, really well done. I have to say the paint featured a two-tone gray paint scheme, and this particular paint scheme was nicknamed the Gray Ghost. This distinctive look sets it apart from the charcoal gray of the first prototype, which was the PAV-1, also as a spider. And um, incidentally, just I was doing some research the other day. Hobbymaster has just released a new catalog items that the second prototype will come soon, which is the YF-23 PAV-1, the dark gray or the black one. And I anticipate that the model will be available on the market later this year, or by end of this year, I should say. Looks like we're only 2 months away from 2026. My goodness, I can't believe how fast this year has gone. 2026 is just around the corner. Wow, yeah. Anyway, the paint accuracy is a bang on. You'll get two sets of removable canopies for opening and close. Also, you'll get a typical Hobbymaster pilot figure. In terms of armament, you'll get two consistent sets of 6 missiles in total, all air-to-air in configuration. Basically, you'll get 3 AIM 120 AIM-RAMs and 3 AIM 9X Sidewinders, and you can swap them up as necessary, of course with the weapon bays open or closed. Hobbymaster nailed the cockpit details on this model. Take a moment and go back and watch the intro shots. Those intro shots have some subtle hints. I hope my efforts in creating those intro shots were worthwhile. Of course, you can display this model on the stand, basically showcasing it in the flight configuration or with the landing gear down. The small labels such as the test pilot name, the Jim Sandberg on the side of the fuselage, other markings insignia on the VTEL, other stencils such as the Northrop serial numbers, also the U.S. Air Force roundel. Overall, I think the shape of the model accurately reflects the shape of the real aircraft, such as air intakes, which they sits in the low profile undercarriage, have some amazing interior details. Even the afterburners, particularly the heat dispersing tiles, are dialed in. For those of you who are sticklers with those details, rest assured you'll be happy with it. So all things are considered with this model. This model is right on the money, folks. It's a beautiful tooling from Hobbymaster. Suffice to say, it's a gem of the model. It's a pretty. Thankfully, Hobbymaster produced the YF-23, and I'm glad that I have this rendition in my collection. Hobbymaster YF-23 is a must-have for any collector, even if you're not so inclined adding it to your collection. I have to say it's a great fit for any collection, and I guess now it's time for Hobbymaster to produce the YF-22 prototype. That would be nice. What do you all think? Placing the YF-22 next to the YF-23, that would be a striking visual in any collection, right? That being said, now I will call the YF-22 the missing piece of the puzzle. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I remain hopeful that Hobbymaster will release a YF-22 someday, and hopefully they add another new tooling to their lineup. We'll see, time will tell. I'll give it a good hunch though. Folks, this model is still available at a reasonable price at the time of this video. If you like it, get it. Don't wait. I will say the smart move is to buy it now. If you wait, you could end up paying way more or not finding it at all. So to avoid that fate, you better act ASAP. I'm suspecting that this model will fly off the shelf. Um, Once again, get it, because once it's gone, it's gone. Good luck finding it one. So that's all for today's reviews. So I do have one note here to one of my subscribers, Colton Rashford. I was recently asked to review the F-104 Starfighter. Well, first of all, thank you for your support and your request. I'll add it to the list for review, so stay tuned for that. But please be aware that it might take some time. It's not a next review on the agenda. So thank you all for watching to the end of the video. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. That tells me I'm putting out a good videos. When you subscribe, you're not just getting a content updates. You're helping my channel gain momentum and keep videos coming, basically allowing me to publish more frequently. Also, I'd love to hear your feedback. Leave a comment with any pro tips and thoughts on what you think of the YF-23. I'll be curious how many of you out there are the fans of this aircraft. Thanks for watching. Until then.